Hello, my name is John Avalos. I'm a proud father of two teenagers and fiance to Raquel Redondias. I'm a 32-year resident in San Francisco, and I'm running for supervisor in the city in District 11. I'm running for supervisor because it's really important that we work together as a community to create bold social change that meets our community's needs. I believe in Invest in Black, and I want to work together with the African American community in Lakeview to make sure that we can actually have the resources we need for our future. Jobs is a big part of that. Also, I'm working all across the district to invest in all of our communities, but the Invest in Black program in Lakeview is one that deserves much more support, and I'm down totally with it to make sure we can actually lift up our communities. This campaign is really important for the whole city, and I believe it's important that we recognize all the candidates who are running and the incumbent who is doing work in the district, and that we can put our resources together to make sure that all of us can be uplifted as we're moving forward in this campaign toward the election. Structural and institutional racism in San Francisco and California. First of all, I support the repeal of Proposition 209. Proposition 16 would repeal Proposition 209. In 96, I worked for months to prevent Proposition 209 from being passed. And what Proposition 16 would do, it would repeal, it would bring back programs of affirmative action that would open the doors for employment for people of color and women, as well as the doors of education. This has been something that's really been important to me for many, many years. I've looked at how we can create structures within city government and within hiring institutions, like in the building trades, so that we could actually ensure that Black, brown people, people of color, and women would be able to get jobs in these places and have access to education in these places. I organize across San Francisco with communities of color in the Bayview and Lakeview to pass the local hiring ordinance. Inner City Youth was part of that effort. Mike Brown, rest in peace, was part of that effort. And that has opened the doors for thousands of people in the southern parts of San Francisco, including District 11, to be able to get jobs that they were being previously denied by barriers and racial discrimination. I also did a lot of work around looking at equity in how we were providing resources to our communities of color in San Francisco. And when city departments came before the Budget and Finance Committee, I would ask and have a whole questionnaire for them to respond to about equity measures. I believe that work led to the foundation that later became the Office of Racial Equity, and I'm really excited to work with the Office of Racial Equity to make sure that we are hitting all of our ways to look at structural racism and institutional barriers in our city departments. We want to make sure that people can hire. We can actually hire people of color in greater numbers. We want to make sure that our communities have people serving them that reflect the makeup of our communities, that our African American community can have people who know the community well and to be able to respond to the needs that we have. We also have a city that often fails to recognize the out-migration of African American folks, and I want to look at how we can put structural measures in place in our city departments to help with that, to prevent that the out-migration, to make sure that we have resources here to protect our communities. I'll touch upon other subjects related to this and other questions. Economic empowerment and out-migration. This has been an ongoing issue for me for all the years that I was in office and beyond. In the southern part of San Francisco, in the southeast part of San Francisco, we saw hundreds, if not thousands, of households go through defaults and foreclosures, and that led to the out-migration of many African Americans in the community. We saw our wealth disappear. Our wealth is often in our homes, and often with the foreclosure, the home was not able to pass on to the next generation. It was really a sad thing that we saw that the Lakeview Hall of Fame that would happen every year also had a barbecue in Antioch for a lot of people who didn't live in Lakeview anymore. To combat that, I put in place a few measures to try and prevent foreclosures. In the Housing Trust Fund, we put language in that to allow for households to modify their loans to get better interest rates and create resources for that. I fought hard to get those implemented, but there was resistance from the Mayor's Office of Housing at that time, who was putting more work into building housing but not looking at home ownership as an issue. In the housing bond that I authored in 2015, we included language for down payment assistance loans for first-time home buyers, but we also had language there to actually assist, again, with people who are struggling to pay their mortgages. I also worked to try and create a principal reduction program that would use eminent domain of the city to buy homes that were underwater, so that the city would be able to be the landlord and then the mortgage holder for people who want to recover their property and to pay a lower mortgage based on the lower value of the house. I want to try to put that forward again as supervisor, because with this great recession or Great Depression that we're now facing, we're going to see a lot of homes that are going to go underwater, and we need to make sure that we're not paying the old value of the home and the mortgage, but we can do something better. The city has tremendous resources that it can apply for helping households keep their property in their own hands, and I want to be able to make sure that happens, especially with people of color and African American households, so we can keep our property and our wealth in our hands and not contribute to the outmigration of African Americans. I did a lot of work in the OMI neighborhoods. I supported inner city youth, IT Bookman, to carry out after-school programs and youth employment programs. In 2009, we were able to create jobs at the airport that were available for inner city youth. Laurel Moislin, who worked with inner city youth, and eventually worked at the airport and was part of helping with that program. We did a lot. We also brought the Economic and Workforce Department to come to Broad Street, and they were helping with Lacey's. Unfortunately, Lacey's was denied by the mayor's office at that time. Not now, probably. At that time, support for reconstructing parts of their wall. But there were other resources that came and enabled the community to have access to food and nutrition. The Dream Team program was part of that back in about 2012, 2013. Also worked to make sure that all of District 11 had other resources available to it. In the Excelsior, we created the Excelsior Works program that was helping to find employment, but also look at working with a lot of immigrants who live in this part of San Francisco. Overall, the city must make a greater investment in Black and Brown communities. I support, again, wholeheartedly invest in Black to make sure that we can actually uplift our neighborhoods and our communities. And I look forward to partnering, even before getting elected, with the people of Lakeview to make that happen. Police accountability. I'm absolutely interested in police accountability and defunding the police and moving and transforming parts of the police into more community public safety measures. To me, the absence of violence is public safety, and what would create the absence of violence would be ensuring that our communities have what they need to survive: access to housing, access to education, access to jobs, access to nutrition services, and the ability to recreate as families together. That is something that has been lacking in San Francisco, and I want to make sure that those things can happen. So putting greater resources on the ground for community empowerment are going to be very, very important, and a source of that funding could be moving from parts of the police department to our communities. I've already been part of that process for a number of years. I've been working to shift money and excess overtime and excess positions from the police department to human service organizations for violence prevention work. I'm really proud of that work. I did it in 2009 and many years afterward. In 2016, I was working to actually withhold money from the police department if they were not going to get a handle on police accountability and stopping the killing of Black and Brown people. That was before the Board of Supervisors, and it just barely didn't pass for some reason. But I felt that it was important to withhold funding from the police department if they are not going to be responsive to our communities and the need to have community-oriented public safety department like the police should be serving but are not. So we look forward to how we can actually create that in the years to come as supervisor to make bold plans on how to ensure that our public is safe and that our public is in charge of our own safe and with oversight from the community. In closing, I am really honored to be running for supervisor and to work to get to know our communities better. I missed that opportunity in 2012 when I ran for re-election, but I'm looking forward to rolling my sleeves up and getting to know the community and seeing how we can build a campaign and a city around our needs. The pandemic shows us that we have to be at our best to support our communities and to work together for mutual aid and mutual support for a better future.